Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Hope everybody is ready for some really good racing. This is the CASS DTM Championship. We are back this week at Brands Hatch, the Indy layout, which I believe is just the shorter circuit. I believe they're still getting the session fired up because it is not showing up in my multiplayer list just yet. Okay, as of 1 minute ago, looks to have been brought up. Brands Hatch Indy, I don't see it. This could be a problem, folks. Gonna be hard to commentate on a race if I can't see it. Okay, seems like nobody else can see it. That's a relief. In its own strange way. But yes, we are at Brands Hatch this evening, the Indy layout, so it's a slightly shorter course. Should be a very good race. There's the lobby. And we are in. Looking forward to this race, folks. Sounds like all dry weather. So the folks that don't like the rain will be happy. I think that's truthfully most. Pit lane here at Brands Hatch, rather interesting. Whether or not the game simulates it the way it is in here, I would imagine it does, and if it does, should be an interesting pit entry. But as the session begins to spool up, we're going to go over championship standings, shall we? Going to be difficult for me to read this because it's a little blurry. pardon me if I don't remember. Some of these names. Bear with me here, one moment. Hang on. Enjoy the view of these cars going around the track, though. Okay, so I thought it was, but I wanted to be sure. So, getting into the standings, we're going to go on board with our championship leader right now. Mark Shine, currently sitting atop the championship standings, also known as Obscure Hi-Fi, with 477 points. Probably go through the top 10 in the championship, unless any of these battles seem very interesting to me. Sitting second place in the championship is none other than Nikita. Had a great first race last week, although the feature event didn't suffer the same fate. He is sitting in second place in the championship with 456 points. Hold on. My dog is misbehaving. Tactical Nuclear Pingu, currently sitting third in the championship, trailing just 6 points behind Nikita with 450 points. Ian McClure, which I believe is Heel Toe Hero, sitting at 449 points in the championship, in fourth place. 10 points behind him is Mr. Ben Grabo, who's currently topping the free practice session right now. He's fifth in the championship with 439 points. Joe Dirt sitting sixth in the championship with 438 points. Want to watch these two drivers tonight in both the sprint and the feature event. Definitely going to be very interesting to see. Joshua Colbreth, otherwise known as second place Merchant, had a pretty all-right race last week. Excuse me. Just pretty across-the-board average. Oh, I'm sorry. He had a decent first race, and then an internet connection dropped him from the feature event. He sits seventh place in the championship with 403 points. Something Fierce, with 363 points, takes 8th place in the championship. Aaron Mills, and I apologize, I do not know his on-track name, currently sitting at 336 points in 9th place. And Spiky Cactus, who I do not see on course this evening, rounds out your top 10 in the championship with 313 points. Folks, got a race ahead of us tonight as Merchant tops the charts. If you're just tuning in, welcome. This is Can-Am SimSport, CASS, as they like to be shorthanded. This is round 4 of the DTM Championship. We're at Brands Hatch on the short Indy circuit this evening for what is sure to be a tight and bitter battle. A lot of people scrambling for points, making up for some lost time last week in the race as Merchant already 2/10 up. But folks, we've got 17 cars out on the field right now. Look at this track map over here. Look at how many cars are piled on top of each other in the track map. It's really going to make this race a race for track position. You can tell it's not particularly wide enough to race, but not super wide to make big diving passes and sweeping moves. You've got to be very articulated, very precise, and surgical with your positions tonight and where you're placing the car on track. It's going to be very difficult to get around people. Not a lot of long straightaways to make passes. So the next best thing we've got is outmaneuvering the driver ahead of you. And raw pace is going to be important in qualifying, obviously, because you want to qualify well. But on a race that is determined by track position, folks, you've got to have a good qualifying. And we've just seen 3 local yellows pop up. But the drivers continue to roll on. So we ride on board now with second place Merchant, who will be the first of the top 3. Oh, I apologize. Pingu will be the first of the top 3 to cross the line. And we will ride on board with Pingu for tonight's track tour, firing it down into the first turn, Paddock Hill Bend. Nice big sweeping turn, but deceptively slower than you'd imagine. Down Pilgrim's Rise and into Druids. This is a fantastic hairpin. A lot of time to be gained here, a lot of time to be lost here. Through the Brabham Bend. Little bit out and behind him, and that is going to be around for Pingu. We'll jump on board with second place Merchant now through the Cooper Straight. Now up here is where the track shifts. To the left would be Surtees, and to the right we're into Clark Curve. Big sweeping uphill off-camber turn into a very strange pit lane entrance you see off to the right, and down onto the Brabham Straight. This will complete the lap, folks. It's not a long lap, 45, 44 seconds, give or take. Really not a slow lap, and big slide there from the car ahead of Merchant. I believe that was Sturhaus. Massive job avoiding that. Heads up driving there from second place Merchant, but as drivers start to post times, Merchant is getting ticked down the board just a little bit here in free practice. We are expecting clear conditions tonight. Dry track, warm track, everybody will be happy. No clouds, we might have some, little clouds, but no overcast, no inclement weather. The rain showers are all but done. Second place Merchant coming off of a season best, a career best Formula USA position result in the America's Racing League ongoing Formula USA Championship. Finished third last week at Termas de Rio Hondo in the Formula USA in the rain. So had a rather tumultuous season, but managed to put some results on the board, and I know that had to feel good for Merchant. We're glad to see him out here tonight, running currently 6th in the free practice. Joe Dirt coming out of pit lane for some more practice. Your championship leader, pretty satisfied right now, or in the garage making some updates, adjustments, tweaks to the tune. Pingu down the Cooper Straight here, trying to make something happen. Up into Clark. It's a fast track, folks. A lot can happen. Really good passing opportunities, especially for those that are much braver on the brakes. Will be interesting to see how the field shakes down tonight. The CB allows Pingu by. Local yellow up here on the, I believe that's actually the Brabham Straight, not Cooper. I don't see anybody off track. And you can see, folks, these cars are oversteering just a smidge. These guys are really pushing the car to the limit. We've seen several cars already go around. So now Joe Dirt should be coming around for a flying lap. And he'll get one more time by as he crosses the line. No time gained in practice. Hear that, folks? That was engine braking right there. That was not braking and downshifting. Very controlled from Joe Dirt. But currently, 3/10 off the pace, almost 4/10 off the pace, his fastest lap. Using every bit of the track there, dipping the tires into the grass. It'll be interesting to see what Joe Dirt has for us tonight. Folks, you can throw a blanket over really everybody in the top 7, 8, but a second covers the top 10, which is insane. I know a second on track is a lot of time, but when you start filtering through traffic and getting into race conditions, folks, that second gap can close quick. And we will monitor the timing stand here to see who leaves pit lane first and follow them for their out lap. It'll be Dave Course. We've seen Dave around in a few rounds this season. Also seen him a few times over at America's Racing League. Haven't seen him in a while over there. He's enjoying some DTM racing over here in Can-Am SimSport. And what an enjoyment it has been, not just for the drivers, but for the spectators. I have been absolutely thrilled to cover this season. It's been so fun to watch the competition here. Everybody's clean and respectful, and some really good quality racing. A lot of door-to-door, side-by-side action. We love to see that. Dave C. now down the Brabham straight and will cross the start-finish line now for his flying lap. We're on board with Dave Course. Whoop, this is not what I meant to click. Meant to click cockpit view. Down into Druids. Again, a lot of time can be made right here. It is uncanny. Through Cooper Straight. And again, up to the left is Surtees, and up to the right here is the Clark Curve. Just a little too aggressive on the throttle, and that's going to send Dave C. around. And it will not be the lap he was looking for. Heel toe hero. Now times start to trickle in. We'll jump to Nikita, who I imagine will put down quite a flyer. Not quite as fast as we expected, though. He is in the high 45s, so we've seen faster. Obscure Hi-Fi, your championship leader, aiming for a really good start to this race, on pace to land in the 45.2s. We did see Joe Dirt and a few of the other front runners had cracked into the high 44s during the warm-up session, so still some potential to be into those upper 44s, but I think we'll settle right around the upper 44s on the front end of this field. Is Hi-Fi now coming down the Brabham straight, crossing the line. That is currently the provisional pole with a 45.179, but we're going to ride on board as Nikita now at a 44.7. Happy with that, and dives back to pit lane. That will be your pole position the time being. Joe Dirt down a 10th and a half. Can he regain the time? Just needs to be up about a 10th and a half. He's now half a tenth to the good through the final sector as he crosses into Sector 3, up the Clark Curve and down into the Brabham Straight. Can he make some time up? He does. 1/10 to the good, and that is enough to put him into P2 just barely. Now, Obscure Hi-Fi will have an opportunity to answer down into Druids. A little bit slant, he gets wide and spins. That is not what we wanted to see from our championship leader. That's not what he wanted to see. Still currently standing third in the starting order. Merchant struggling to find the pace he had early in the warm-up. As now we just tick under 1 minute to go in the qualifying session. Merchant just a little slower than he'd like to be. Down into turn 1. Very slow on the apex. That is an aborted run for second place Merchant. Nikita back out on track. No time gained for your current pole sitter. Joe Dirt will be the next to cross the line. Currently, 3, almost 4 hundredths to the good. And I believe he will have just barely one more opportunity. That is time gained, but not enough to take the spot from Nikita. This will be Hi-Fi's last lap. No time gained for Obscure Hi-Fi. Ben Grabo is in pit lane. We watch now as Heel Toe Hero trying to pick up some spots. Currently sitting P5, but 2/10 to the good on his fastest time. Starting to find a rhythm here. Through the final corner and down the straight. This looks like it will be a quick lap. And it is good enough for P3, knocking Obscure Hi-Fi down to P4, and Joe Dirt did improve, but only just. And this, folks, will be your qualifying results. Nikita, Joe Dirt, and Heel Toe Hero will round out the top 3. Obscure Hi-Fi, Ben Grabo, second place Merchant, Tactical Nuclear Pingu. CB, Dave Coors, and Waylon Crace will take you to the top 10. Something Fierce, Rigatoni, Shadow Puck, Sturhaus, and NZ down to P15. And Tarka and Orange Hat round out the back of the field in P16 and 17. Respectively. Folks, this is going to be interesting. Very excited to see what we have tonight. I wish I could get a better look at the start of this race, but if I go to anybody in the front 2 rows, I can't see any of the action behind. Not a fan of that. Good old AMS2 cameras. The sprint race will be 29 laps, which means our feature race will be double that. So we'll be looking at 58 laps in our sprint event, or our feature event. Excuse me. Really wish that I could control the camera here a little bit better. But what can you do? We're going to watch Joe Dirt here, who will have an opportunity to lunge for P1 at the start of this event. And everybody is away, free and clear. Nikita jumping up to the upper line there, trying to defend that high lane and keep people backed up. Getting away with a great clean start. Joe Dirt maintaining P2, Heel Toe Hero in P3. Second place Merchant with a great move up to P4, and Hi-Fi now knocked down to P5. Merchant on the charge, but Hi-Fi right behind. Everybody free and clear of incident in the first few corners, what we love to see here in Can-Am SimSport. As now we approach Clark Curve, a little bit of a wide entry from second place Merchant. It's going to open the door for Hi-Fi to try to sneak in, but he doesn't quite get it done. Now down the down the Brabham Straight, and that is one lap of competition done and dusted. As we fire into turn 2, Merchant trying to regain some ground here just a little bit, losing sight of the leaders with a big lunge from Joe Dirt, trying to get after Nikita. This is the closest I've seen Nikita to the rest of the field all season. When he starts on the pole, folks, within the first couple laps, he has opened a significant distance to the rest of the field. But not tonight. Joe Dirt hanging right on in there, trying to catch up, and cars stacking up behind him. This battle up front is going to dictate what happens behind. And like I said in the practice, folks, very important is track position. You've got to have the car and the position on track to really maximize this race. Notice there's not been a whole lot of position changes at the moment. It's because passing is so incredibly difficult. The track is not real wide. It's wide enough for a few moves here and there, but you've got to make aggressive and desperate moves into the corners. As you see Joe Dirt, just a little bit of a lockup there going into the Graham Hill Bend. It is insanely difficult to get around on Brands Hatch if you don't just have raw pace. And when you're in a spec series, everybody's in the same car with slightly different setups. It gets very challenging. Again, look at the track map. This is the most congested the track map has been all season. Everybody is within, a second and a half of the leader. Or I'm sorry, a minute and a half of the leader, 10 seconds of the leader. So it's a lot, but it's not. Is now Joe Dirt starting to fall off just a little bit from Nikita. Dave Coors chasing down Pingu. Doing what he can. Rigatoni facing a little bit of pressure from Something Fierce behind. Fierce had a great run. Good battles last week. And we've got a local yellow. I don't know who is spun. I believe it is Sturhaus, potentially. That's a strange location to put the local yellow, though. Is now Joe Dirt. The accordion effect on the gap continues to expand and contract, but he is really doing his best to try to keep the pole sitter in his sights. But every lap, the gap opens just a little bit. As they crossed the line last lap, we're at about 4.5, 5/10 back. And he'll be sitting right about the same this lap. Obscure Hi-Fi trying to chase down second place Merchant. This is your championship leader. Wanting some strong results tonight. Really wants to see Nikita have some issues, some error, some weaker results, as that will significantly improve his chances of maintaining the championship lead. Pingu goes a little wide and into the grass there, but nothing too chaotic. Something Fierce still chasing down Rigatoni. Once again, the gap ebbing and flowing. And speaking of ebbing and flowing, this gap is flowing in Joe Dirt's favor. Firing it into turn one. Chewing up the curb. But I think he's just... some small microscopic mistakes have caused him to fall off the pace a little bit. Going into the Druids corner, folks, just 2 laps ago, he was at 4/10 back, and then he was 6.5 in Druids that time. So this gap, certain parts of the track, is still continuing to open, but he's definitely closer in Sector 3 than he's been. Potentially learning from his opponent. He continues to chase down Nikita. Front of the field starting to separate. We'll have a few 3-car battles playing out. The battle for first through third, all pretty close together. 4th through 6th, also pretty close together, as Ben Grabo now trying to get around Hi-Fi. Once again, folks, passing opportunities, they are not very frequent here at Brands Hatch. This is going to be a race of patience and potentially a race of attrition, as Orange Hat now off circuit on the exit of turn 1. And it looks like Rigatoni off circuit on the exit of Druids. Ben Grabo really chasing Hi-Fi, and Hi-Fi with a pretty good run on Merchant. So now the gap to P1 is starting to blink over 1 second every so often. Nikita beginning to do what he does best and drive away from the competition. Grabo really trying to make a wide entrance work. But great defense from Obscure Hi-Fi. Testament to how he's reached championship leader position. Doing a great job just keeping the guys behind him. Lot of three-way battles, a lot of three-car packs just kind of separated from each other 9 laps into this event. Folks, this is the sprint. You've got to be on your toes and ready to act. As we now cross for the 10th lap of competition, we're already approaching halfway over with this race. But as I mentioned, look at the standings, folks, with the exception of a couple little bobbles. As there, Hi-Fi had a little bit of a bobble, and Ben Grabo was right there ready to try to pounce, but he didn't get it done. Track position, folks. It's such a hard track to pass on. It looks much wider here on the trackside camera than it is, but if we ride on board with Ben Grabo, who is trying to make a move on the championship leader, it doesn't take much to defend here, folks. It's just barely wide enough to get 2 cars side by side. You've got to be bold and brave on the brakes or find a creative line around. That's why I'm saying, folks, track position super important here at the Indy circuit in Brands Hatch. And Ben Grabo doing a great job of just staying close. Merchant chewing up the tarmac and the dirt, trying to find every tenth he can to get away from the cars that are chasing. And there goes Ben Grabo. He is spun. I don't believe there was contact with the wall, but that was a costly incident. As now Pingu gets around and will begin chasing down Hi-Fi and Merchant. Folks, like I said, patience is key. Cleanliness is key. Trying to find the rhythm in the car and just keep it in one piece. Fortunately, Ben there did not seem to connect with the wall. Did a good job of bringing the car to a stop. And now Dave C. really starting to put the pressure on Pingu here. Got another car run wide on the entrance of Clark Corner. I believe that was Tarka. Merchant starting to get some pressure from Heel Toe Hero. Or I'm sorry, Obscure Hi-Fi. But right here, this pack of 3 is starting to squish together. It's very easy to follow the guy ahead of you here, folks, because track is... there's not a lot of room for guys to really get ahead and stretch their legs. So drivers are able to stay in the slipstream and kind of learn the line of their opponent and learn the best opportunities to pass, as Dave Coors really all over the bumper of Pingu, and I think he's going to try to make it happen down into Druids, but he doesn't get it done. And now Pingu's starting to run into the lap traffic. They do their best to get out of the way and not impede the leaders here, their lead lap cars. And Dave C. really watching for an opportunity. He has a great run on the Brabham Straight. As they fire up Clark Curve now, we're going to watch Dave C. and ride on board, see if he gets another great run for position. This is the battle for P5 in the DTM Championship Sprint Race. Look at the gap closure right there. Immensely later on the brakes. Every tenth of a second counts. And he's really just trying to make something stick here. Force a mistake from the car ahead of him. That's the best you can do. as we've had another retirement to the pit lane. It was a driver up front. Joe Dirt has retired to pit lane or disconnected. I'm not sure what happened. But Joe Dirt is now out of contention, and that leaves second place Merchant and Heel Toe Hero as the other two steps on the podium. Massive run again from Dave C., just trying to find the window to get by. Truly uncertain as to what happened to Joe Dirt. Hope everything is all right with his system. Would love to see him back for the feature race. Great racing going on here as this mid-pack fight really does just kind of linger. Hi-Fi trying to close in on second place Merchant. Run a little bit of damage control. They just can't find the opportunity. Merchant maintaining some pretty good consistency tonight. Dave C. putting the pressure on Pingu, but Pingu not cracking under the pressure, doing a great job of just keeping his head down and driving his race. Once again, it's very difficult to get past, so defense is not as significant here. You have to drive a bit of a defensive line, but as you can see here, he's just kind of favoring the middle of the track. Makes it very difficult for the drivers behind to get around on either edge. Where it does begin to throw you, though, is into turn one there. You lose a lot of speed on the entry if you're in that middle lane, and now Dave C. starting to face a little pressure from CB back behind. Gap begins to open, though. Dave C. with a much better exit out of Druids and into the Cooper Straight, just trying to chase down Pingu. Folks, if you're just joining us, we are on lap 18, approaching lap 19 of our sprint race tonight in Can-Am SimSport's DTM Championship. This is round 4 from Brands Hatch. We're running the Indy layout this evening. What a championship it's been. What a race it's been. You gather that there's folks biding their time, waiting for the opportunity. Is now lapped traffic once again will begin to impede your lead lap drivers. And this is what Dave C. wants to see. An opportunity to check up the car he's chasing down, and this might be the closest he's been. Coming out of Clark Curve, Dave C. with a great run down the Brabham Straight. Can he get it going this lap? You can see he's trying to make a move. Wide entry. Stays in the slipstream. Great run on the exit of the first turn. Down the Pilgrim's Plunge and into Druids. He's late on the brakes, but it's not going to be enough to get past Pingu. Scrubbed a lot of speed on the entry into Druids, and that gave Pingu the opportunity to continue to drive his race and stay ahead. Great defense, great heads-up driving from both drivers. Really good attempt. That lapped car definitely gave him an opportunity to strike, but it wasn't enough. Hi-Fi continuing to chase down second place Merchant, but nothing can be done so far. Just driving a clean race and hoping that the car ahead will make a mistake. And so far, Merchant is driving nice and tidy. And folks, let's hear it for Nikita once again, reminding us that however fast we think we can go, you can go a lot faster. An unfortunate strand of luck has meant that Nikita is not your championship leader. A few poor issues and unfortunate mistakes and incidents in a couple of the feature races and sprint races this season have cost him some very valuable points. Far and away your fastest driver on most tracks. But a few nights he just hasn't been able to keep the results or put the results on the board he'd like. And as you saw, he was fighting the car just a little bit going up into Clark Curve there. Managed to keep it planted and under him, though. What a great drive from Nikita. Second place Merchant now trying to defend his bottom step on tonight's podium. And Obscure Hi-Fi chasing him down. The clock is ticking, folks. Only 7 laps of competition remain. And I think Merchant might be starting to feel the pressure from the car behind. And speaking of pressure, Dave C. still sitting right there in Tactical Nuclear Pingu's mirrors, making sure he knows that he's still there. Not going down without a fight. As Pingu comes up, rounds the final corner, and goes down into Brabham Straight. Will cross the line to begin the 24th lap of competition. This is the closest Hi-Fi's been. Very close now. Merchant starting to seemingly fall off the pace just a little. But not giving up, not giving any opportunities away. I have a sense that this battle for the final step of the podium will go to the last lap. Question is, do we see a Hail Mary attempt from your championship leader to get that last step on the podium? You can see that car just seems like it's less patient now. As the laps tick on, you can see the patience wearing thin on the 48 machine of Obscure Hi-Fi, really just trying to find an opportunity to get by. And wearing himself out, getting trapped. The pace of these two drivers seems to be very, very close. But I imagine we start to see some very bold moves shortly to try and get around. Wide entry into Druids once again. We've seen that maneuver played many a time this evening from several different drivers. It's just such a challenging maneuver because you lose so much speed on the outside of that hairpin that it's very difficult to regain it, and the car you're trying to overtake has such a run coming out of the corner that it's hard to put the power down and get the throttle where you want it for a good run out of Druids. Down the front straightaway. The race still heated for the position of 5th and for 3rd. These two drivers still very close. Merchant maybe taking a little bit more curve there in Druids than he wanted to, but still maintains a pretty decent exit distance. Doing everything he can to hold off the championship leader. Merchant trying to play recovery from an internet connection issue last week during the feature event, costing him a significant batch of points. Certainly on pace to have had a fantastic race last week in the feature. Bummed he didn't get the opportunity to see it to fruition. With now just 2 laps of competition left, Dave C. starting to get impatient. You see it here again, late on the brakes into Druids, but not getting it done. However, The amount of time scrubbed, much less than laps previously. He's still right there and in striking distance. I think we will see another move before the checkers fall. Second place Merchant continuing to face pressure from Hi-Fi, but this is it. This is the most important time of the race. Final lap. We've got a big incident up ahead. It was a lapped car off and into the gravel trap. Merchant now trying to face down the pressure from Obscure Hi-Fi through Druids. That seems to be where everybody wants to make the pass, but they can't make it stick, and Merchant continues to lead this battle. Pingu, though, is facing massive pressure from Dave C., who I imagine is beginning to get impatient behind the visor. Do we see another desperate move before we're through? Obscure Hi-Fi, no opportunities before the line. That will be how it shakes out, but Dave C. doing everything he can, flashing his lights. That seems to be a sign of defeat. And the congratulations to Pingu for the defense. What a drive. But folks, the race start is where we saw most of the track position change. It's very difficult to get past here. And will be interesting to see if drivers really put an emphasis on their qualifying setups in the feature event to try and make the most of the car and make the most track position they can, because honestly, once you get up there, you just have to drive a clean race. We will have a brief intermission, so please hang tight, sit tight, enjoy, go get a drink, go to the bathroom, and be right back for the feature event, which will be 58 laps. Can't wait to see you guys. But let's take a quick break. Hello and welcome back. If you are just tuning in, this is Can-Am SimSport's DTM Championship. We are entering the 5-minute qualifying for our feature event tonight. We've just completed the sprint. Nikita came out victorious in the sprint race, with Heel Toe Hero taking second place and third place going to second place Merchant. Obscure Hi-Fi coming into this event was your championship leader. Nikita may be looking to dethrone the current championship leader. But we've still got a whole lot of racing left this evening. The feature event, twice the length of the sprint, thus awarding twice the points if Hi-Fi can put something together. And Nikita potentially having an issue. You can potentially see your championship leader maintain his lead as he now crosses the line for his first timed lap. As short as these laps are, folks, drivers can get upwards of 5 to 6 laps in qualifying if they're quick to pull the trigger leaving the box. And with this championship, we do qualify both races, the sprint and the feature, as Waylon Crace will get 0 place grid penalty. Not sure what that means for pit lane violation. I imagine that was speeding on entry or exit. And now Hi-Fi on the exit of Clark Curve down the Brabham Straight will cross the line. The 45.540, still plenty of time to be gained. Second place Merchant with a 45.761. These two battled it out most of the race. You missed much of the feature event. One of the topics of my discussion was track position and how incredibly important it is to have. It's a very difficult track to get around people on. It's pretty narrow. Wide enough to race, but not by much. Passing opportunities seem to be few and far between. The Obscure Hi-Fi up 300ths, but not really as fast as he'd like to be. It will be enough to take the pole from Nikita provisionally, but Nikita definitely has buckets of pace. And we'll be looking to answer here with a 45.006. Dave C. crossing the line with an impressively quick 45.323, and second place Merchant not moving up the leaderboard where he'd like to be. We're also watching for the gentleman who is not in here, Joe Dirt. He's just reconnected, but he may not be able. He may have had some connection issues in the last race, which have caused him to lose some connection. Ben Grabo finding himself on pace for P3. Great drive from Ben Grabo. Nikita has seemingly retired to pit lane. Does have a few moments left to get out there and put a time down, but clock is dwindling. As he leaves the box, he will have the opportunity probably for an outlap and one flying timed lap, and that will be it. No time gained from Ben Grabo. Hi-Fi really trying to regain some ground here. He will get another attempt, and that is good enough for P2 right now, provisionally, with a 45.240, 2/10 to the good on that pass, and Merchant jumping up to P3. Now, qualifying falls to the hands of Ben Grabo, who will be one of the next front runners to cross the line. We'll check Heel Toe Hero, though. No time gained for McClure, and we now watch Ben Grabo down the Brabham Straight. 3/10 to the good. That is P2 now for Ben Grabo, knocking Obscure Hi-Fi down one more position. Hi-Fi will have another opportunity. Can he gain any time? No time gained for the championship leader. He is starting P3 in the feature event. Joe Dirt up to P6 with a very truncated qualifying attempt. Glad to see him at least get some time in. Waylon Crace will be crossing the line here, currently on pace to be quicker. A little bit of a slide. Mid-corner and Clark curve. Down the main straightaway, where does Waylon Crace land? He's at a 45.976. He gains about 0.2. Good enough for P11, folks. Going to be very interesting. Obscure Hi-Fi will be looking to make moves early. Our current pole sitter, Nikita, had an incredible run in the last race, but Joe Dirt was right there nipping at his heels for the first roughly 10 or 12 laps. So what we're going to want to watch your championship leader, who is sitting right behind your pole sitter tonight, for a very aggressive start to this race. Once again, track position. I cannot drive that point home enough. You've got to get up front as early as possible because we didn't see a lot of shakeups in the grid beyond the beginning of the race and incidents on track. So you've got to get as far up the field as you can when the green light shows, and you've got to stay clean. Keep the car tidy. Keep the car pointed the right way. Just put up a decent enough defense to really force a mistake on the guy that's trying to attack. But another guy we want to watch is the driver sitting in P6. Disconnected from the last race, presumably for internet issues, as he had some issues getting into qualifying here. But he's back. Qualified 6th. Last round in the sprint race, he was P2 and right there with our pole sitter for quite a good number of laps. So it'll be interesting to see what Joe Dirt can do on the start right off the rip into the feature event. We are 58 laps tonight at Brands Hatch Indy for the feature race. So this will be a very interesting showdown. Indeed. We will jump to Ben Grabo, also showing a healthy amount of pace. We're going to watch Ben Grabo. Up here in the back corner is your championship leader. And there goes Merchant up the inside, firing it past Ben Grabo, and Hi-Fi maintaining his lane and keeping himself in contention for P2. And he will get it. Merchant running a little bit wide. And now on the attack. And Dave C. in the background facing a lot of pressure from Ben Grabo. Drivers all over the place. Joe Dirt 3 wide coming into the Clark corner. Or Clark curve, I apologize. We're still trying to make it 3 wide. Absolutely insane. Drivers are driving this freaking feature like it's the sprint race. Things starting to settle down for the front of the pack, but only just. We still see some movement up ahead. Dave C. trying to get past Ben Grabo, and he does on the inside of Druids, but is it going to be enough to keep him back? Ben Grabo now facing a little bit of pressure from Heel Toe Hero in the back. Now we start to see the cars filter into single file, and your top 3 beginning to separate from the field. Ben Grabo now chasing down Dave Coors, but facing pressure from Heel Toe Hero. They start to fan out on the straight, and I imagine we're going to see a move from Ian McClure on the exit of turn 1. Lost a little bit of his steam there. Doesn't have the run he quite hoped. Great defense now from Ben Grabo. Obscure Hi-Fi trying to chase down second place Merchant once again. Merchant with a commanding start to this race. Qualified, I believe, P4 or P5. And just fired it right up the middle of the starting grid on the drop of the green and is now sitting in P2. We've had a retirement. Not sure who it was. Graybo crossing the line in P5. And Joe Dirt charging his way through the field, but he is going to catch the tail end of this fight between Heel Toe Hero and Ben Graybo. It'd be very interesting to see how he gets through it. Passing opportunities few and far between here at the Indy layout of Brands Hatch, but he is going to do everything he can. Started P6, down a position, probably due to all the chaos that we saw in lap 1, 3 wide, down the Cooper Straight. Absolute insanity. As he continues to try and find an opportunity here. Monitoring the rest of the field. Most of the field is spaced out just enough. A little bit of a battle here between Pingu and CB. Something Fierce running a little bit wide in the back. Waylon Craze there to follow. Pingu, no stranger to putting up a defense, as he did so in the last race in the sprint. And it seems he is prepped to do so again. Folks, the front of the field is just one on top of the other. Dave C. chasing down Hi-Fi, who's chasing down Merchant. Really hoping for a mistake at the front of the field to maintain championship leader. And Nikita will cross the line for lap 7 of competition and have a half a second lead and growing over the rest of the field. Already chipping away. What a drive from your pole sitter in both events tonight. Second place Merchant. Keeping defense from Hi-Fi. Local yellow there for a moment. I'm wondering if somebody just kind of went a little wide and into the grass. Everybody seems to be intact and pointed the right way. It's Hi-Fi trying to get a run on Merchant down the Brabham Straight. This does seem like he's got a good head of steam behind him. Be right on board with your provisional championship leader. Late apex, not going to happen. Merchant closing the door on him on the exit of Druids. And Ben Graybo really now trying to chase back Dave C. with a nice poke to the inside of the Cooper Straight. They're going to go side by side into Clark Curve, but it's not going to happen. And now the door's open for Heel Toe Hero behind. Little bit of contact, and Hero falls way back the running order, losing 2 spots in the altercation. And Ben Graybo losing a little bit of distance on his opponent ahead, but not a significant amount. And Joe Dirt back up into P6, trying to gain some track position. And now he dives to the inside of Druids, forcing the hand of Ben Graybo, making him leave a little bit of room. Pressure significant now from Joe Dirt. Joe also facing pressure from Ian McClure behind in that blue machine. These guys not giving any opportunities to anyone. Another dive on the inside of Druids, but he doesn't get it done. You can tell he has the pace. He just can't get by. And now facing more pressure from Heel Toe Hero behind. Folks, this is a driver that has podium pace, top 2, top 3, and he's sitting P6. Surely behind slower drivers, as now Dave C seems to have had an incident. Something has slowed up the driver who had an incredible qualifying for the feature, and they go side by side down into turn 1 through the Pilgrim Plunge. We're going to see a late braking maneuver from Joe Dirt 9 and into Druids on the inside of the apex. They'll be side by side down into the Graham Hill curve and onto the Cooper Straight, but he's going to get just a little bit squeezed out, switches back to the inside, and it's a drag race down the Cooper Straight and into Clark. Not going to happen. Joe Dirt not getting the opportunity, but he's not lost much momentum either, and he's right there on the exit of the final corner, and down the straightaway I expect we're going to see another dive here as he pops out of the slipstream on Dave C and makes an opening on the apex of turn 1. Pokes his head in again to Druids. He is not afraid to take that inside line and make you work for the outside defense. And he's currently nosed ahead, forcing Dave C to the inside, and that is a pass well done from Joe Dirt for P5. What a great bit of action, but Dave C not done yet, trying to answer back late onto the entry of Clark Curve, but it was just a little too late, had to check up behind him, and that's going to cost some significant time and very, very valuable track position in the battle for P5. What a great race we've got on our hands, folks. Right here in the mid-pack, you are tuned in watching DTM Championship presented by CASS and provided to you by the LPO Network. That's me. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're enjoying the race this evening. We've got quite a race on our hands. But this battle seems to have cooled off just a little bit as drivers just working on trying to get the car home in one piece. Joe Dirt has some ground to gain. He'll cross the line. 1.6 seconds behind Ben Graybo. And we will watch that gap at the end of the following lap. Nikita opening the gap to 2.5 seconds over the rest of the competition in commanding fashion, and just as Nikita has done in the past. Hoping for better results this evening than he's had in previous rounds. Always seems to have a great race, whether it be the feature or the sprint, but cannot typically get both races to connect for him the same night. 1.4, 1.6 seconds behind Ben Graybo is Joe Dirt at the line that time. So that gap is maintaining itself. As we've got a car off Waylon Crace. Seems to be no damage as he gets back out on track. Nikita leading the field. Second place Merchant leading Obscure Hi-Fi, who is leading Ben Graybo. Once again, we've got a couple pockets of 3 cars in the mix for position here. The battle for P2, 3, and 4 between Hi-Fi, Ben Graybo, and second place Merchant, followed by the battle for P5, 6, and 7 between Joe Dirt, Dave C, and Heel Toe Hero. And even back towards the back of the field, the battle for P10, 11, and 12 between NZ Sturhaus and Tactical Nuclear Pingu, who must have had an incident earlier in the race. We're trying to regain some ground. Expect to see some moves from the number 58 machine. Sturhaus trying to make some moves on NZ. Hi-Fi really trying to do something here with second place Merchant. The guys, these two have had such close pace all night. They have been nose to tail the whole evening. Now we're starting to see more drivers take that inside peak on the entry of Druids. They've seen it done by the drivers behind, and they're thinking, you know what, maybe I can make something like that happen. And the moves are starting to trickle down as now, folks, Joe Dirt just 7/10 or so behind Ben Grabo. That gap has closed significantly, 3/10 at the line, and continues to dwindle. Joe Dirt is on a mission to regain some track spots. Folks, he is not afraid to use that right lane on the entry of the hairpin. And he's also not afraid to make these things 3 wide down the straights either. Do not count him out. Be very interesting to see where he decides to strike. Ben Grabo now starting to face pressure and put pressure on the car ahead. These guys are stacked one on top of the other, making a passing opportunity a very massive challenge for these drivers, because you won't just end up side by side with one car. It will be multiple cars. So he fires it up the outside of Druids and switches down to the inside lane. It was a great offensive maneuver. He kept a lot of steam, a lot of momentum, and was able to get up alongside even just for a split second. It's now the fight raging on for the battle for P4. They snake into the Clark curve and out onto the Brabham straight. Folks, the fight is heating up. Right on board with Joe Dirt. As a reminder, folks, he has P2 pace. Listen to the throttle control there. On the outside of Druid, side by side, runs a little wider than he'd care to. Falls back into P5, and we've had somebody off and into the grass. I believe that was Tarka. But he's showing his hands, folks. Ben Grabo doing a great job of defending that inside lane, forcing Joe Dirt to take the offensive line on the outside. Once again, we're going to ride on board. Watch his offensive maneuver here. Oh, and Ben Grabo spins. That is a spin from Ben Grabo from P5 or P4, and Joe Dirt will reclaim another spot on the grid tonight and will now be chasing down the championship leader in P3. And this is not what Hi-Fi wants to be seeing right now. Right now, Hi-Fi wants to cruise to the end of this race and try to gain a position back from second place Merchant, but he will have to start playing defense as Joe Dirt's just charging through the field now. Massive, massive upset from Ben Grabo, sitting P4, and he's now flashing his lights saying, hey, buddy, I'm here. And you're not going to be able to avoid this for long. Classic move on the inside of Druids. Doesn't get it to stick just yet, but there's a little bit of side-by-side action down into the Graham Hill corner and onto the Cooper Straight. Starts to fire it up the left side of Hi-Fi, and he does get around. Hi-Fi now down to P4 and Joe Dirt up to P2. What a drive. But, folks, he's going to meet his biggest adversary as he's flashing the lights again at Merchant, letting him know this battle is about to get crazy. These two went at it head-to-head for several laps last week, and they're about to do it again. Merchant facing incredible pressure now from the car behind. And Joe Dirt just trying to find the opportunity around. Headlights flashing. we're going to see a move. Coming out of the straight, I imagine. Big swerve on the attack. Second place Merchant. Joe Dirt goes wide. Not going to be enough. Merchant holds that inside lane, and Joe Dirt runs way wide on the exit, but it's not too far wide. He maintains the inside. Shoulder check there on second place Merchant. Merchant fires it on the outside. It looked like there might have been a bit of a lift there from Joe Dirt. Didn't feel maybe comfortable with the shoulder check to get by. And now there's contact between Hi-Fi and Joe Dirt, and those guys are both off and into the gravel. Massive upset for Joe Dirt. I imagine there's some frustration and anger behind that visor, and now Ben Grabo is going to try to fire back around Joe Dirt, and they will drag race down into turn one. Ultimately, Joe yielding the position, try to reclaim it later, potentially even later in this lap. And Merchant driving a fantastically clean race. Folks, it's hard to take our eyes off of Joe Dirt right now. Putting a lot of pressure on Grabo here. Down the front straight. Beautiful maneuvers here from Joe, side by side into the Druids corner. And there's a little bit of, I'm not sure if that was a desync contact or what. It looked like Ben Grabo got hip checked, but I didn't see any sort of contact on screen. Not sure if that was a matter of desync or maybe catching some of the marbles offline, but folks, how about a hand for Nikita? Up 8.3 seconds on the rest of the field on lap 27 of competition. Great drive and a great, but truthfully, a great comeback from a tumultuous few races. Like I said, always being able to get a good result in either the sprint or the feature, but not typically managing a great result in both. Really trying to sweep tonight's event. So we've now got Ben Grabo and Joe Dirt fighting with Obscure Hi-Fi. Hi-Fi not able to put up much of a fight for Joe Dirt. Not sure if that was intentional, as that contact there in Clark Corner. Maybe feeling a little bit of guilt, making it easy to let him by. And now Ben Grabo will be chasing down Hi-Fi. But nothing from the 23 machine behind Hi-Fi. Not able to make anything happen. Sturhaus facing some incredible pressure now from Pingu. Just trying to get around. Definitely a driver with top 10 pace, and now Sturhaus running a little bit of wide into the Clark curve. Not sure if Pingu followed and made a similar mistake or just tried to scrub some speed to avoid an incident, but definitely missed an opportunity there to reclaim the position. But now all over Sturhaus and on the inside of Druids, a lot of drivers taking that maneuver now. We didn't see it much during the sprint race, but the feature, it is getting used and abused. The fight for 6th and the fight for 7th, very, very tight right now. Sorry, the fight for 10th and the fight for 7th. Pingu now on the exit of the final corner down the straightaway, trying once again to find an opening on Stur Haas for a top 10 position. Just seemingly not able to make it work. But he does go side by side on the outside of Druids. It's a brave move. Fortunately, it didn't cost him any major damage, any damage at all. It didn't cost him any major time. Now down the Cooper Straight and up into the Clark Curve. Definitely trying to force a mistake from Stur Haas here. CB trying to get past Graybo here. Pingu not able to do anything there. Joe Dirt back up to P5. We'll have a lot of ground to reclaim anything close to the top 3. Still has plenty of time to do it. Currently a 9-second or so gap to the drivers in the next chunk of the grid. It's Nikita now 9.5 to 10 seconds to the good over most of the field. Definitely at least the front runners. What an incredible drive. No, we haven't given him much screen time, so we're going to give him a little screen time now as he commands the field, has commanded the field from the drop of the green. Really has not had any competition this race. The sprint race, he had a little bit of pressure there early on from Joe Dirt, but managed to stay level-headed, keep a clear mind, and made it through that relatively unscathed. Actually, completely unscathed. Back here to Ben Graybo. Facing a little bit of pressure still from CB behind. And Pingu trying to get around Stur Haas, but Haas really putting up a great defense for that final position in the top 10. Great job. All of our drivers tonight putting up some incredible defense, some very clean and impressive maneuvers to get by. That's what we like to see here at Can-Am SimSport. The gap now between Joe Dirt and the top second, third, and fourth. Oh, man, we've got an incident. Haas has gone wide, and Pingu gets around. Way up the hill and in the grass goes Stur Haas. Valuable time there as now Waylon Crace will get by, and Shadow Puck will get by, putting Stur Haas last in the running order on the grid this evening. And it seems second place Merchant has had a big incident. I'm not sure if he was collected in the incident with Stur Haas. Looks like it might have been. Second place Merchant has sustained a significant amount of damage, which is incredibly heartbreaking considering where he was running, but he is not pitting, folks. He is staying out and in the competition with Joe Dirt just a few car lengths behind now. And Stur Haas has retired to the box. And Joe Dirt will now be aiming to chase down second place Merchant. Dave C. up to third, with Merchant still in his mirrors. Shockingly, with the amount of damage he has, you'd imagine, there goes his hood, that he'd be a little slower, but not giving in without a fight. Is Joe Dirt starting to close the gap down a little bit? The gap over the rest of the field certainly closed down significantly from Nikita. Is that incident up ahead is... Oh, we're under safety car. That is what's happened. That explains a lot. I was watching this gap shrink rapidly, and that would be because we're under the safety car. Well, while we're under safety car, folks, if you're just tuning in, this is Can-Am SimSport, also known as CASS. My name is Les. I am doing the commentary for this fantastic series. This is their DTM Championship. We're on round 4 of 6. We've got 2 more races after this one. 2 more rounds, 4 more races. This is the feature event of the evening. We've run our sprint race. It was a half distance. This will be full distance and award double the points of the sprint race, so very crucial if you had a poor race in the sprint to try to make something happen here, as we've had another retirement. Not sure who it was. Now, traditionally in this series, when we've had a safety car, it's only been out for 1 lap. And once again, the safety car will dive in after just 1 lap. Not a real big opportunity for drivers to get in. And now Nikita steamrolls to the front of the field, and the restart is good. Everybody is back and underway. Heel Toe Hero handed P2 on a silver platter and not looking to let it go. Second place Merchant trying to get around Dave C. and also subsequently defend from Joe Dirt behind, sustaining massive damage prior to that safety car, really just trying to keep the car pointed the right way and not make any massive mistakes. But now the pressure from Joe Dirt really starting to show it, and we've got a big off in the back. I'm not sure who that was. That was Waylon Crace managing to keep it off of the wall, which is hugely impressive. Not sure if that was a shunt. Looks like the car's relatively intact or just a missed braking point. That car's struggling, and there's the wall for Waylon Crace. Big bump to the wall, likely some suspension damage there. But he will continue on and truck through it at least for another lap. It's now the battle for the front of the field. Dave C. has found himself competing for the podium and maintaining, actually, the last step on the podium. Second place Merchant really putting on one hell of a defense for a driver that's missing several nuts and bolts and has sustained an incredible amount of damage. Joe Dirt doing everything he can to get by, but Merchant not making his life easy, and now Joe's starting to face pressure from Ben Grabo. These guys are both very quick. Grabo up the left side. They'll be side by side through turn 1. Ben Grabo with a nice run out of the exit of 1. We'll have the outside line into Druids. Who is going to yield the position first? Once again, side by side through another corner and into Cooper's Straight. Joe with a little bit of a wide run, and this is what Merchant wants to see, is the battle behind him is causing the cars behind him to slow down and check up just a little bit, which allows him some breathing room. After sustaining the damage, he really just has to hang on to this car for another 16 laps or so. And bring it home. He'll still have P4, which is decent for the points, especially in the feature race, considering could be much worse if he pit for repairs. And Grabo, though, now on the hunt for P4, chasing down second place Merchant, but Joe Dirt is going to be right there in striking distance, and CB tucked just behind. really making this fight for first very interesting, or I'm sorry, fight for fourth very interesting is now Ben Grabo, you can see, evaluating his options on the exits and on the entries through Clark Curve here, up through and onto the Brabham Straight. But Joe Dirt also behind Ben Grabo, trying the same thing, looking for opportunities on exits and entries to get around his competition. And now Merchant runs wide on the entry to 1, and Ben Grabo will get by. Joe Dirt's going to try to sneak through for another position. Merchant, a little bit of a shoulder check, but ultimately yields the position in Druids. And that is Joe Dirt and Ben Grabo up to P4 and P5 respectively. Heel Toe Hero just trying to keep up with your pole sitter and race leader Nikita. But the gap continues to open in classic Nikita form. This is what we've seen all season. When he gets into the front of the field, drives away from him. The gap hovers right there about a second to a second and a quarter. Dave C trying to chase them down. The battle between Joe Dirt and second place Merchant is not over just yet. Or I'm sorry, second place Merchant now facing pressure from CB. A little bit of a bumper tap there. CB backs off, an Obscure Hi-Fi, provisional championship leader, way down the running order after a little bit of an incident earlier in the race. Trying to get around CB, slides a little bit, but manages to catch it, and that's going to open the opportunity for Pingu to try to sneak through, and he will try to do so side by side down the front straight. Late on the brakes into turn 1, that's going to give him the nose on the apex, and he manages to get around Hi-Fi. Down the Pilgrim Plunge and into Druids. Tactical Nuclear Pingu up to P8. Hi-Fi down to 9th. Merchant doing a great job holding on to the car and putting up an incredible defense from all the drivers behind. Folks, Ian McClure, this gap just a lap or two ago was over a second. I don't know if he's found something or if Nikita is falling off some pace, but this gap, it's ebbing and flowing, and it is ebbing and flowing in Heel Toe Hero's favor. Just through Druids 2 laps ago, we were at 1.2 seconds, and we are down to 0.7 seconds. He is not giving up the position. He's not giving up this fight. 12 laps of competition left. Anything can happen, and he's hoping for the pole sitter to maybe make a mistake. This will be a race to watch, folks. Ben Grabo chasing Joe Dirt. The racing starting to get very intense. Here at the end of the competition, the feature race proving to be very intense for many drivers. Trying to recover some ground from potentially a unsatisfactory sprint race. These two have duked it out many times this evening. Just aren't letting up, and now Merchant facing pressure from Pingu, who is just trying to continue working up the field after an early race incident cost him some significant track position, which is a premium here at Brands Hatch, especially on the Indy circuit. It's very tight, very technical. Deceptively challenging, and even more so to get around people. Especially in these BMW M3 GTRs, they're rather wide, making them a force to be reckoned with getting by. Merchant doing a great job holding guys off, though. He knows he's slower than these people, but he's doing a fantastic job of really forcing their hand and making them work for it. They're scrubbing some significant speed to try to get around. As now Ian McClure right there with 11 laps, 10 laps of competition to go, we'll call it. Less than half a second on Nikita. begging the question, has McClure found something that has made him much quicker in this last stint? Or did Nikita have an incident that's costing him some time lap over lap? Pingu trying to make a move on Merchant into Druid's not going to happen. Just maintaining the gap. A little bit of pressure from Hi-Fi behind, but nothing incredible, nothing insane. Starting to peak, but not happy with the angle, so he backs out of it. Heel toe hero. Seemingly a little earlier on the brakes into turn one there, but has a great run on the exit. Down into Druids very late on the brakes and wide entry. Nikita really beginning to face a little bit of pressure and having to, for the first time in both of these races, really play defense and protect his track position. As heel toe heroes maintaining that roughly 0.2 to half a second gap. Trying to flip this race on its head. The safety car really did a number to Nikita's lead and allowed a lot of these drivers who maybe found some pace late in the race a second chance, a second stab at the lead, especially with the podium sitters being shaken up a little bit. Pingu has found his way around second place Merchant, who's now going to start to face pressure once again from Hi-Fi. A driver that I'm sure is tired of seeing the back bumper of second place Merchant this evening. But continues to try and chase him down. The gap between Nikita and Ian McClure now opening up. North of half a second periodically. We were almost at 0.7 there for a second. Druids, it always seems to open up just a little bit as they make it to the exit of Druids now. I'm talking about the race leaders here. Looking at the trap map. Hi-Fi late on the brakes, but not late enough to get any ground here on second place Merchant. 6 retirements in tonight's event. Started this evening's festivities with 17 drivers. We're down to 11. Very difficult track to navigate. These guys are doing a swell job. It's Hi-Fi really trying to find an opportunity to strike here. We're on lap 53 of 58. 5 laps of competition remain. 6 laps of competition remain, I apologize. 5.5 or so. On the inside of Druids goes Obscure Hi-Fi and does get around second place Merchant, but Merchant still putting up a very intense and aggressive defense, maintains the position down the straight and into Cooper's. Great job for Merchant, who is a 1.5 seconds off of his best lap delta. His best lap pace. That damage really costing him a lot of time, but doing everything he can to mitigate track position. Folks, like I said, passing here at Brands Hatch is very difficult. If he can just play the track position game and put up a half-decent defense, might be able to still bring it home in P7 with 5 laps remaining in tonight's event. Nikita has now opened the gap back up to about a second over Heel Toe Hero, who had found a second wind there towards the end of the race, but has started to fall off the pace. Significant loss of time there. Was at 1.6 seconds there for a moment. Hi-Fi trying to find a passing opportunity here as Ben Grabo gets past Dave C., who seems to have had a little bit of a bobble gone off track. Joe Dirt now up to P3. Wondering if Ben Grabo and Dave C. maybe had an incident between the two of them. But Joe Dirt, hell of a drive from 6th to 3rd. And not without its challenges along the way. Merchant fighting for his life here. Curious. I'm going to watch down the straightaway, see if the steering wheel is still straight. Does look to be pointed the way he wants it. Which is certainly good for handling the car. Sci-Fi now once again firing it into that right lane and on the inside of Druid, side by side with Merchant. This move worked a little while ago, but Merchant managed to defend it on the outside, converting it to the inside entry of the following corner, and he does. Merchant really working that inside lane on turn 3 to maintain that position. And keep Hi-Fi at bay. Really is bunching up the cars behind him as well, which is going to work doubly in his favor because now Hi-Fi is going to start to face pressure from Fears and is going to have to defend rather than go on the attack, and that is going to give Merchant the opportunity to breathe, and he only needs another 2 laps to hang on to P7. If he can make it through this last lap and a half, it'll be his position to lose. But Hi-Fi starting to get a little bit impatient. You can tell just in the way the car's attitude is. It's a little bit twitchier. It's a little bit jumpier. You can see he is getting on the throttle a little quicker and maybe trying to make some late braking and late steering maneuvers to get around Merchant. As we now enter the final lap of competition. Great run out of turn 1. Merchant leaves the inside of Druids open once again, and they will go side by side into Druids. Can Merchant hold him off into the following corner? The moves worked so far, but it doesn't hold him off this time. Merchant now down to P8, and Hi-Fi gets around to P7 on the final lap. Merchant's done everything he can to hold on to that machine. And will it be enough now? Something Fierce putting on some pressure, but it won't be enough. When we cross the line, Merchant will come through this. P8, Something Fierce. I'm sorry, P7, Something Fierce comes across. P8, Obscure Hi-Fi. I'm not sure if this was... Not sure what happened here, truthfully. Hi-Fi had a 5-second penalty. What a costly penalty that was. Finishing order is Nikita P1, Hielto Hero, Joe Dirt P2 and 3. Ben Grabo, Dave C, that is your top 5. Tactical Nuclear Pingos, second place Merchant. Something Fierce, Obscure Hi-Fi with a 5-second penalty. And Nate Z will bring you to the top 10. Waylon Crace will bring you to P11. CB, Shadow Puck, Sturhaus, and Tarka for P15. Orange Hat and Ninja Rigatoni will round out your grid this evening. What a race. What a feature. What a sprint. What an everything. Absolute brilliant drive from all of these drivers tonight. Very entertaining to watch. It's a tough track, folks. Brands Hatch does not forgive much. Certainly doesn't have a lot of room to make much in the way of maneuvers. So, brilliant job to the drivers. Massive congratulations to Nikita for a true return to form. I have a feeling we'll have a new championship leader by the end of this event, and I am pretty sure it will be Nikita. Absolutely incredible. Another fantastic Can-Am SimSport race come to a close. Great job to everybody behind the wheel. Thank you all so much. If you're tuning in to watch the race, thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. And for the CASS guys, that's going to be about where the CASS portion ends. I've just got to do a little bit of self-plugging now for the rest of my schedule this week. And starting with more sim racing stuff, we'll be back tomorrow night with America's Racing League. And that will be our Formula USA 2026 round 7. 2026 season 1, round 7. This is our Driver's Choice Grand Prix. We will be at Suzuka tomorrow night. This was chosen by all the drivers in the Formula USA Championship. We voted on 3 tracks. This is the one that was voted to be the site of the Driver's Choice Grand Prix. So we'll be at Suzuka tomorrow. And then Wednesday, I think we'll be back to RV There Yet with the NASCAR miniseries reaching its conclusion last week. We're back in RV There Yet and into some of the fun casual crew games this week. So can't wait to see that. Friday we'll be back in Sea of Thieves. Thursday, obviously, I'll be off. So be sure to come tune in and hang out. Going to be lots of fun. Plenty to go around this week. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for being here. Take care. And I will see you guys in the next one. Good night, everybody.